Well, welcome to the Common Sense Defense Podcast. Common Sense Defense Podcast is a place for the everyday person where they can understand defense policy and issues that impact our national security. My name is Tolly Pruden, and today we'll be discussing the Common Sense Defense community and the essence, really, of the Common Sense Defense community. Our individual desires to influence a safer future for our children and our grandchildren. And so today we're going to be looking at Ukraine and Taiwan as lessons. I think there's no better lessons for democracy, or should I say the sustaining of democracy, than looking at Ukraine and looking at Taiwan. Ironically, today is the Independence Day for the Ukraine, and also happens to be the 6 month mark for Ukraine's war with Russia. I want to look at the Ukrainian population, and I want to equate the American population to the bigger geostrategic environment globally. And the way I want to do that is I want to look at, if we were citizens of Ukraine before they went to war with Russia, what kind of attitude would we have about our nation? What kind of attitude would we have about defense? If Ukrainian people knew a year ago what they were going to be going through today, do you think they would prepare differently? Do you think they would look at their geopolitical and their military situation differently? And the answer to that is irrefutably yes. They would have looked at it differently. And so let's look really quick. So when the Russians invaded Ukraine on the 24th of February, the Ukrainian people were in just total disarray. But one thing that happened that was very interesting that all of us globally were able to look at was how the population coalesced around the defense of the Ukrainian nation. The men all went to go volunteer. The women went to go do what they can do to support the troops on the front line. And as the weeks and months ticked by, you could see that they had a common desire, interest, and drive to not only protect the Ukraine, but also to drive out the invaders, which were the Russians. So I think that any population that wants to be free has to have a mindset: I will die for freedom. I will die for my family. I will die for my community. I will die for my country, to be free and to keep my freedom, to have the freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom to go where I want to go. And so all of those things that you have to look at are the most important things that we as a nation have to be able to make sure our people are able to gain and sustain. And so I really believe that if we can just as a nation coalesce around freedom and democracy, and as a people group focus on what we need to do to sustain that, then all of a sudden we'll be in a situation where every American citizen and our children will be fighters for freedom, fighting for democracy. So let's look real quick. So the Ukrainians, they they volunteered for organizations and different groups to fight against the Russians. No one had to pump and prime and make them join. They just by default wanted to go and defend their nation. And I think that it's got to be something deep within your heart to want to do. Now, let's look quickly over at, let's look at Taiwan. Taiwan's a population of about, I think, 23.9 million people, 24 million people. Taiwan's in a similar situation in that they have China right across the border, about 75 to 100 miles across the Taiwan Strait. And the Taiwan people have to kind of get the same kind of fight and grit in their spirit and their attitude about democracy and freedom so that they can remain free. You look at how Taiwan has got a national defense, they got the Air Force, but I mean all their material is great. But what Taiwan needs most of all is they need every member of the individual population to have a fighting spirit, an attitude that, you know what, I will die for democracy. And until the young people, the 18, 19, 20, 21 year olds are saying, hey, you know what, I know that we have compulsory training where we all got to go. I'm gonna go and learn all I can, as opposed to the reports being that a lot of the young people don't even try to get out of the training, try not to have to go on the deployments and try to go on to the defense training. They are kind of getting around the corner, and that's not going to that's not going to get it. You look at the United States, where our Navy, Air Force, Marines, we may have to go there and send our children there to fight and die to push the Chinese out of Taiwan if they invade down the road, or die in the air, or die on the sea trying to protect Taiwan, or help Taiwan to become keep its democracy. And it's totally unfair to have American young people going, fighting, and dying in planes and on ships, possibly through landing as an invasion to recapture Taiwan. It's not fair for our young people to come and die for Taiwan when their own people right now seems like they're not putting their best foot forward to defend Taiwan. And so, yes, freedom has a cost. Yes, freedom has a drive that is necessary to sustain it. And so that's what I think that everyone who comes to the common sense defense should be looking for and should possess, is that attitude is, I will fight and die for freedom. And it doesn't matter about what political persuasion you have. It doesn't matter about what organization you're with, or it has nothing to do with that. Everyone has to have the opportunity and desire to want to fight and die for freedom. Okay, so moving forward, this is our second session. This is the essence of, I believe, of what the Common Sense Defense podcast is about. Moving forward, how do we go in and look at different situations? And that's really what I want to do, is I want us to look at each individual situation that our nation is dealing with from a national defense perspective, or defense policy perspective. I want to look at each individual situation and be able to be in a situation where we can look at it critically and say, what can we do differently here? Or what do we need to do? Or what can our policymakers do? Or what can our defense planners do? So you have flag level officers that make decisions for the military on a day-to-day basis. You have congressional leaders that make decisions for the national defense on a daily basis. You have industry defense officials that make decisions for our national defense every day. You have citizens who can have a voice and say more to our elected officials, to our policymakers, to our industry people. We can all say and do more. So the question is, are we doing that? Are we looking at options to push projects forward and to push capabilities forward? And what organization, what group, what entity is out there that's willing to really push the envelope to make sure that the defense planners have all the tools that they need, and the Defense Department organizations have all the weapons that they need. It's not about spending a bunch of money or spending more money. It's about spending the billions of dollars correctly on each individual program, whether it's an F-35, whether it's the next generation of nuclear intercontinental ballistic missile, whether it's the next level of the Columbia-class nuclear submarine, whether it is hypersonics, whether it doesn't matter. The list goes on and on and on. We need to be able to look at, can we get more out of this capability? Do we need to put more in it? And so I really want the common sense defense community to be able to look at each individual program, and the policymakers, and the leaders, and the flag officers, and say, are we doing the best that we can do? And when we come to an answer that yes, we're doing the best we can do, we're prepping our nation so it can be strong and have a strong defense. We're prepping our nation for a possibility down the road, and we're going to have the best preparation. We're going to have the best weapons and the best funding possible. Then I think that we will accomplish our goals. So that is what I'm hoping and believing out of the common sense defense people who listen to us. I hope that from these podcasts that you're able to say, you know what, I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to do better. I'm going to help our nation become stronger, or use the best capabilities that we have with the tools that we have available. So my hope is that we can kind of start threading through that. And so in our next podcast, we're going to talk through some of the details of action, of some of the details of of what we can do, and some of the buttons and levers that we can push to positively impact our defensive future. So, hey, we appreciate you. Have a great day, and we look forward to talking to you on our next podcast. Take care now.